Okay, so I think we should be starting in a couple of minutes. Maybe 2 or 3 more persons will join. Some will join throughout the presentation talk conversation. So I guess let's allow 2 more minutes, because people here, we have this thing with time in the city and the coffee and the stuff here and there. So yeah, let's allow them 1 more minute or so.
Sounds good.
We are not in Switzerland here.
I guess not.
Oh dear. What a topic. What a topic, the whole thing.
Is there anything you want to focus, or shall I just start and then we'll have a conversation?
Yes, I think that's the best way. So you can, let's say I will start now. Let's say that we're having this colloquium that we call in an archaeology of media. It's difficult for me to say it in English. I haven't said it in English. We've been thinking in Spanish. Un coloquio en arqueología de los medios. And we trace this colloquium with 4 lines of research. Some of these lines we have been working with for about 6-7 years. In the line of media, ancestralidad y tecnología, ancestrology and technology, there are like 5 publications already. One is by Gil Charalambos, a video artist professor, ex-artist, as he would like to be presented. He developed a very nice research around the thunder in different regions, planetary regions and communities. We also have a book by Barbara Santos, who had a long and, let's say, life process research in the Pirá Paraná, a river near Venezuela. I'm mentioning all these words, Avi, so you locate yourself in this kind of context of, the river, Orinoco River, that is a big river nearby the Amazon River. Still few communities down there striving to survive in these technical times, with younger generations trapped by the telephones and these smart mobile devices with WhatsApp and Facebook and all these technologies, and losing their oral traditions. Basically, these are at least 7 communities that have 7 ways, dialects of communicating and speaking and living and sharing the life with the river, and the whole ecosystem is in perfect integration, let's say. So we approach this topic with the lens of technology as a word that is not that word that comes from, let's say, California, or the one that comes through Hollywood, the one that is in a cloud and digital and all that. All that kind of business approaches and ways of selling. So we are trying to cross this topic, and these 5 books have helped us a lot. So we trace this colloquium on that line. Also, we put in the table the question of interspecies, or relaciones interespecíficas. So we were trying to combine these 2 lines, and at some point we realized that it's the same thing. The balance, when you are in an interspecies relation, you are actually doing what our ancestors from these regions have tried to tell us for decades, or centuries, or thousands of years, is a complete integration of relation between species. So ancestrality at some point could be exactly the same thing. And this was something that came through with Barbara Santos, talking with her. Unfortunately, she's not here now, but maybe she will join us later. Those 2 lines, and the other 2, to wrap this quickly, are the typical art, design, and technology one, the confluence of these 3 lines. And the other one is the one that Juan Orozco, another friend, that is sharing the topic with Maria Angelica and a few others. They've been working around the media archaeology. And it's been quite fun. They've been doing performance. Yesterday they had a telematic performance. We've been talking a lot about common friends like Zelensky or Hitler. And yeah, more or less that traces the line for why inviting Avital Ronell to join us on this open conversation, wild and open conversation, into the wild in these tropical latitudes, where we will love to host you for real, not through Zoom at some point. So this is an invitation. This is somehow like a call to say, okay, let's open the first level, the first space for you to arrive here. I had actually already worked with one of your texts, the one coming from the Crack Wars, the book, The Crack Wars. Emma on Ice, or yeah, EM on Ice, I think, is the correct title of this little fragment. And it was very good. I mean, we had a very nice exchange with the students of the master's degree at the Universidad Javeriana. And it was really wonderful to see how it was opening paths and possibilities for thought here. Because we met in Switzerland, and that's a complete remote location, even in the sense of thought. I mean, it's kind of another dimension for thought. So having this little spot here now is for me the chance to say, okay, let's invite someone whom I think will help us thread an open space for new possibilities of thought. So I don't know, I don't want to introduce more. I'd like you to go ahead, or question or ask us anything, and then maybe we give you some reference or whatever. But please share with us, Avital. I think it's part of your next book upcoming.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, and I'm so honored to be among you, to be parachuting in. I'm happy to resume my work with you, which is crucial to my always fragile well-being. I'm so happy to see Maria Angelica again and work with her and everyone else here, Maria Paula and Laura and Alexandra and everyone else who's going to add on, including those who are not present, the undead, the unborn, those who can't join us for all sorts of reasons. I want to acknowledge our pain in the world today. It has a different contour, perhaps, a different kind of pressure zone and devastation than the daily dosage and homeopathic drops of horror that we must endure and bulk up against. So it's such a wonderful and necessary existential hiatus to find myself among you, to be able to travel spiritually, intellectually, materially, and virtually to your spheres of being. It's just I'm trying to think how I'd like to approach today's session, because as usual, Alejo, I'm overstimulated, overprepared, jammed up with too much to say, and also all of the blanks and silences and heartache that won't speak anymore. So there's, spaces of silence through which I'm signaling, and maybe even on a level of neural signaling, I'm trying to get through. But let me just say a few things. At the juncture or intersection of psychoanalysis and philosophy and the literary attunement that we're formed by, you and I, though you have a vaster knowledge of material and new technologies, as well as their sacred link-ups and furtive, sometimes subterranean logic. I've learned so much from you. And are you waving? Is there a problem? No, we're good. I don't hear you. Okay. So I work with unconscious and fundamental structures. Of course, the unconscious and fundamental analyses need to be deconstructed, but let's not stagger and stumble immediately. That kind of feed some of our habits, create institutions that disavow them and then suddenly go violent and aggressive without our being able to comprehend what the hell is going on. So I like to probe and consider what in a technological way tests to failure. So how do you push certain phenomena, events, non-events in archaeologies and genealogies to a point where they falter and cease to deliver or are suddenly shut down. And it's these kind of knots of difficulty that I like to stand by and dwell with and consider and reflect on. Sometimes they're improbable. For example, well, before I go there to the improbable, implausible, outrageous, let's say, considerations and athematic themes that don't usually get treated, like what do you eat? What did you just have for breakfast? I saw you smoking. I was going to say coffee. So for Nietzsche, this is crucial. There you go. This is crucial to our ability to philosophize and probe and also consider the bodies that engage in thought or are decimated by certain deprivations also. Now, it doesn't have to be a grandiose elimination of food supplies or the narcotic prosthesis, but it could be a question of strange menus that Nietzsche thinks burdens our ability to think. For example, the so-called German so-called cuisine, he thinks, is very dangerous to thought. So he shifts to the more Southern options on the material and philosophical menu. So following Nietzsche, who was a philosopher of throwing up, was very important to him to be able to throw up, which might seem a little obscene and unseemly, but Deleuze says that Nietzsche is always reversing dialectics that tries to digest, assimilate, and also kind of dematerialize the basic things. So following Nietzsche, I like to pull up some menus and see what we eat, what we inject, what we smoke, what we reject, and how these areas of very also imaginary introjects, but materially prompted, work us over. So in terms of trying to think with and through and against the global north, or what's known as the United States, I wondered long ago already why the favorite food item is consists of hamburgers and frankfurters. and when that started, and how that's a way of chowing down or assimilating the enemy, to the extent that hamburgers and frankfurters are names of German cities. So how do you incorporate, how do you live with strange and a seemingly banal national choices? This, I start with this banality so that I can now become a little less comprehensible, perhaps, though I don't assume that I'm that intelligible. Actually, prompted by the Friedrich Schlegel and the Schlegel brothers, I try to think of new unintelligibilities rather than render things intelligible. What makes things unintelligible, which is almost our philosophical, political duty. For example, I'm taking a sidebar here. If you read Sandy Stone's, I think you know Sandy Alejo, and maybe Maria Angelica, did you work with her? In any case, if you read her post-transsexual manifesto, which is grappling with Juan, hi.
Hi.
Which grapples with the technology of, let's say, rejecting intelligible bodies, attitudes, behaviors, the phantasms of recognizing oneself and the other, or being able to identify with or identify in a kind of, I'm saying it too quickly and simply perhaps, totalizable way. Part of her manifesto's stated wish is to recruit technology or redeploy it in order to render our bodies, our so-called selves, and whatever we think we can rely on in terms of the tropics and tropologies of the figure of interspecies, species, and things that we think we're familiar with, including our purported selves. She finds it even a kind of what Nietzsche would call supramoral, or we could call ethical duty, to render ourselves and surrender ourselves to our greatest unintelligibility. And this could go all the way to Levinas, where instead of thinking you know the other and can appropriate and judge and prescribe and know what the hell is going on with them, you're baffled and stunned and staggered and left speechless by the majestic escalade of the other. So it's more writing off the cognitive grid, and not in a sense penalizing or containing the other, or even different facets of self according to recognizable language and tropes. So I took the fast track, and maybe this is of no consequence, but it has to do with technologies that purport sometimes to render things more intelligible, more available. This is what Heidegger, in his thinking in Being and Time, and Die Frage nach der Technik, so the question concerning technology. By the way, am I speaking too quickly for the translator? Is this okay?
It is okay.
Thank you. Okay. I deeply appreciate your effort and care with our languages that we need to sanctuarize and preserve in so many ways. So the transgender, let's say, growing importance as a recognizably persecutable object, and that keeps on getting kicked down, is sacred and disdained, disparaged, a pariah, and now a leading figure of our inner monstrosity, or what Donna Haraway calls the promise of monstrosity, meaning that something that is not at all limited to the transgender or post-transsexual being is faltering in very important ways around more unintelligible gender manipulations. So one of Sandy Stone's agony is the aporia, or the contradiction in the forcing habit of making transgender technologized, hormonally and surgically enhanced, post-human, human, transhuman, as Nietzsche would say, figurations, making them make sense to what is commonly called heteronormative, kind of, if there's such a thing, pre-technological paradigms and so on. So if you're a successful trans person, you're able to efface your previous history, or you must fit into some fantasy of a recognizable gendered being. So she's trying to urge, following Derrida, a blow up of multiple alterities that are unrecognizable and unintelligible, which is a difficult duty, if you will, to inherit, to adhere to internalize. Like, could you imagine saying, make yourself unintelligible? Stop, because only dominant forms of tyrannical imposition say, let me make this very clear, or read my lips. That used to be the right wing, you and I discussed it, Alejo, utterance par excellence of Bush, for example. I'm going to be very clear. Let me be. No, don't be clear. Be queer. But in any case, I wanted to start with the invention, of new unintelligibilities that perhaps need a lot of space to happen. So when you say that these communities are limited, are suddenly erasing their histories through cell phones and so on. For sure, that's always the danger of any archive, including the bodily archive, what you've stored, what the inscriptions are, what the failures to read become. But Sandy Stone urges one to fail to read. So instead of saying, this is who I am and what we do, just read yourself, which is an activity of close to Benjamin's task, the Aufgabe, meaning, as in the German word Aufgabe, give it up. You can't do it, but it's also a Gabe, a gift. It's what's given to you to do or undo or fail to do. So I wanted to respond to your wonderful setup for today and say that I've been working lately on what I call the Gestell from hell. And Gestell is a Heideggerian term for the way we're technologically set up, for which what he calls America is the supreme indicator. So Rilke and Heidegger and a poet called Lenau hate America, meaning, I think, the United States. And I'm very entangled in the politically incorrect contamination of the signifier America that is supposed to limit itself to the United States. But there's always leakage and overlap and the invasion of Germanic tropes and tropologies into the Americas. I mean, you've had your, when I say you, I'm almost comical and outrageous, but I mean that Latin America has had its hospitality extended to Nazi infiltrators, or something's going on in the global north, Latin America, that has re-released tropologies of fascism and particularly of Nazism. So I'm looking at that infection and return also, of course, through Trump, whose German heritage had his original name is Trumpf with an F at the end. He knocked off the F. So what is returning to us in the Americas from myth themes and destructive habits? I'm not saying we don't have a whole menu of destruction going on that may not link back to Germanic roots. But why is that pernicious and possibly disavowed part of encroaching Germanicity opening up again? Lyotard, the French philosopher Jean-François Lyotard, said that Nazism was just dropped like a rabid dog and was never analyzed, treated, worked through, if that's possible. Werner Hamacher, who you know as well, who was the German contemporary Hegel, we could say. He said there's too much work in all of our assignments. Like, we're working through, we'll work it out, we'll hug it out, we'll work on it, we're still working on it, you know. So what is this premium put on work? But there's been no work, even though there's the all sorts of gestures of work that have been ascribed to Nazi tropologies, behaviors, grammars, racisms, and non-racisms. Things got named as race that aren't part of race, rigorously speaking. But a lot of this has to do also with the Nazi state being one of the most, in the contemporary, starting with the 20th century, spectrum of nationhood and national behaviors. It believed in technology, and it also derived some of its go power from the immediacy promised by technologies, and the ability to destroy, and video games and so on perfectly pick this up and replicate the excitability that technologies and war machines derive from all sorts of temporal instigators. I'm saying all of this, we need lots of time and repair to my syntax, or syntax, as Lacan called it. Like, what are my habits that cut certain lines of logic and blow up logical bridges, for which I apologize because I'm trying to keep time. Let me just say that, because I want to respond to your queries and field some questions, that you mentioned Friedrich Hitler. maybe one of the disagreements that we might have had, though our friendship was magically unbreakable, tender, committed, which isn't a contradiction, but in the end of his tour of duty on this earth, he didn't like Derrida so much. And I always wondered about that. I'm left wondering about that. And I'm wondering if it has to do, and I look to you for answers here, with Kittler being more and more inclined to be tuned into and acutely aware of the material aspects of the technologies. And Derrida started and continued to relentlessly track the revenants, the ghosts, the spiritual parasites that are housed by technology. And that's where I took off in my career as a philosopher of technology, which is to locate, summon, talk to, have seances with the phantoms, the spirits, and the invisibles that populate our imagination, and who's living in, what kind of undead are being contained by our technologies. So I have a lot to say about that, but I will maybe link it to what was said earlier, which is Heidegger and Rilke and company despising the global North America version of America, seeing that, and which was an effect of technology, the Americas, but certainly the United States portion is technologically overrun to the point that it's become and started out as impoverished, has no spiritual housing development program, so that Heidegger and Rilke, and this is uninterrogated, unchecked, by the way, the European disdain for America, which spills over to your neighborhoods as well. No, to my knowledge, no one has put up a flag and say, wait, or pause. Why is there so much uninterrogated, unquestioned hatred of America? What does America stand and fall for? That's what I'm investigating. But for Heidegger and Rilke and many others, the United States of America, l'Amérique, and America with a K, also for more refined ways for Kafka, who never visited, neither did Heidegger or Rilke. But what imaginary place America, but seriously damaging, destructive place America holds, it's related to a kind of technological overdrive that has not only not housed the gods never, they didn't abandon the Americas. They were never here, according to the European philosophers. So the spiritual impoverishment allowed for a technological override and a kind of drive that is highly destructive and unaccompanied by ghosts. So houses aren't houses. There's no ancestral, mind you, this is from these Austro-German Nazi-prone loudmouths. I mean, they're concerned about the impoverishment of America, and they went into spiritual overdose in terms of what a nation should be and could be, and how to lead into the phantasms of greatness that were always attended by technological prowess and immediacy. So Europe reading America and the Americas is also, since the Humboldt brothers and so on, reading itself not being able to read. And instead of settling on their own unintelligibility as a duty, like where have we fucked up and why, and something keeps on being far too transparent and understandable and dismissible. So that's one of the things that I've been pursuing. And the other one is the invention of certain technologies, now linking back to Nietzsche's menus and eating habits, and Nietzsche, the great expectorator who threw everything up and puked, and found that to be a legitimate philosophical reflex. There was in the history of Northern America, the Donner Party. I don't know if you know this, but they went to the West Coast and then encountered a blizzard and then had a disaster and started cannibalizing one another. This became a national disaster. There was horror and shame and a reset of moral anxiety, perhaps one of the few, that showed that humans who thought they were more enlightened and attuned could descend to such criminal behaviors. But this disaster, like so many disasters, brought incentive to technological progress. From then on, condensed milk existed, canned foods, which purportedly was a leading innovation in feminist movements. Women didn't have to stand in the kitchen all day anymore, but all sorts of a relation to food started demanding preservatives. Something opened up as a dossier of disaster that had to do with what gets, again, incorporated, introjected, thrown up. And I'm also tracking modalities of national nausea that technology tries to keep down, weirdly enough. So I know I took the fast track here and indicated little motifs, but I really want to open the conversation up to you, and I hope it wasn't too dreadful. I was prepared actually to discuss what it means for dreamers to dream, and how the American dream is a trope that already existed in Plato's Republic, and how endangering to dogmatic tyrannies dreamers have always been since Plato's Republic, because what happens in your dream, can it be regulated by lawmakers and laws, and do you wake up to the sobriety and lucidity of governance in the morning? But the citizenry at night can commit all sorts of trespasses, incest, murder. So the unconscious already was making trouble to any kind of dogmatic, and nightfall. It's like a Las Vegas of the unconscious. What happens in the unconscious should stay in the unconscious, but how does it leak? And how can the dogmatic lawmakers, the despots and others, control unconscious productions and co-productions among the sleepers and the dreamers of a nation? So that would be another track altogether, which is, what is the threat from Plato to Freud of the dreaming population of the night? And will it wake up and shake off its abandon and its lawless transgression.
Wonderful. There's a feedback here. While you were speaking, we set up a room for the ghosts and the visitors, and a whole, a place to host and bring in the gods, those that were always here anyway. I'm very happy to hear you, Avital, because it's like a pump of energy for a very big amount of lines as we were expecting. I'm very happy also to see that Carol Sabadini joined us. She's the leader of this group team, and she's having a migraine today, so I don't think she's going to be participating much, but at least she's here with us. She's a good friend. I wanted you to meet her at some point, but you couldn't arrange a meeting. Well, she was also on a tight agenda when she visited New York, but it's great, Avital, because this unintelligibility and the difficulty brings me back to the tricksters and the toons, the cartoons, that sometimes I think is this goofy character or is represented in exactly the point where you cannot define, categorize, is always so important. And in the relation with other species, you of course brought in sandy stone, and although is a transsexual manifesto, a very important read. I was sharing it already. I'm thinking in terms of the plants. We've been talking a lot about plants, and the experience with the ayahuasca, for example, that is to digest and to, let's say, intoxicate. And I know Juan will be able to help me with this notion of intoxication, what it means. But then the relation with this Nishian act that you also talk about, throwing up. The plant brings you to these particular moments of puking and having these dreams and hallucinating. And after you have the experience with the plant, you can say that there's a nice welcoming transformation. It comes in a new way to understand and to look at the world, and especially to the plants. You are aware in another way of what we've been talking throughout the colloquium about, the possibility of locating what is knowledge or what is intelligence in the plants, and how we relate with them, and how we start a new way of elaborating thoughts. And I'm going to stop there, but I'm just resonating to many of the things you said. I mean, I need to go back to these notes. The bodily archive was mentioned yesterday by Samantha, who's not here. But I know that Juan might be able to also bring some threads to what Samantha was expressing when she talked about the archive and the body. The importance of misquoting or failing to read. For me, misquoting is fundamental. I will never quote, I will always misquote. And yeah, passing through Heidegger and Benjamin, and then that question about Hitler and Derrida, that I guess, we will have to entertain that question with a proper seance, and trying to bring them both to the table and see and try to understand what was going on there. I might have some speculative ways of understanding why Hitler was kind of distant or cold about what Derrida was proposing. And I think that's another fantastic question. When is this book going to appear? When are we going to be able to read it and to have it in our hands, or to be able to follow up with so many things?
It's being reviewed So I handed it in. I had to cut it down to size. You know, that's a recent technological pressure for all of us that you have to kind of reduce your work to bite-size pieces.
Well, I wonder, I know Maria and Juan, and I would love to see if more people could open the cameras, because it's, as I was saying at the very beginning, maybe some just came in, is a unique opportunity, unique chance for us to start building a path for you to visit and to come and join us here. So it's wonderful if someone who's here would like to join in and ask some questions, participate, give some feedback, yeah, comment, whatever, you know. So it's the moment to have our voices come through and yeah, speak up, please. Everyone is welcome to.
Can I talk a little bit? Can you hear me?
Yes,
this has a lot of echo.
well.
Okay,
There's
that's great.
echo, but it's I can hear you.
I just want to follow. Oh, thanks so much. That was so incredible, and always listening to you, just talk and think and talk again. It's just so inspiring and wonderful. I was very interested in a point where you were talking, and I'm going back to some of Alejo's ideas of these plants as technology, or like ancestrality as technology. And at some point you say that there was this sort of moral superiority in Europe that had the spirit, many, like what kind of in this opposition, America didn't have the spirit, but it had the technology. And that sort of emptiness that comes and that sort of, so I would love if you can develop a little bit on those ideas of technology and spirit, because I think it's some of the stuff I've been listening in this colloquium.
Well, thanks to you and this discussion, I realized that it's a false contradiction, but there's something about the Northern American, meaning US, bully attitude that impoverishes everything, which as a Nietzschean Derridian, one would want to transvaluate. In other words, things for Nietzsche, and in some instances for Derrida, start popping and happening in maybe furtive ways in the place of a stated impoverishment. We'd have to think with Emerson, maybe, what impoverishment as, let's say, an American, Northern American symptom and attribute, how it works. Because, there's also the relation that we all have that is complicated, but it can be somewhat reductively rendered as our relation to old Europe as part of a constituting and disavowed background check on us. Europe's also right now what's happening in the Middle East is also, has a European instigation and incubation period where people were thrown out of Europe and exterminated and murdered, and then landed and on other people, and all sorts of violence was perhaps repressed for a while, and now is like the return of the repressed, or what happens when disavowal dominates the scene. Terrific aggression and murderous intent shows up suddenly with an instigation, no doubt. But I wanted to say that European forms of spirituality are that they that Heidegger and others found lacking in America, which is an empty shell of spiritual becoming and substantial being. Let me just pull this together. It's not wrong, because look at the wild run of capitalism, of false sovereignties, of religious pretense, of Christian perversion, and making all this white supremacy, Christian nationalism part of a major profit margin that is very oppressive to everyone. It's very endangering and dangerous. That's not mistaken. That is a real facet of over technological fervor. In Heidegger, if you look at the worldlessness, Weltlosigkeit, of that belongs to technology, it doesn't take long till you see that he connects it with the Jews. But I have to leave that off. So it has many layers, and it's what Freud would call overdetermined. There's lots of ways in which to understand the advantages and benefits of advancing such an interpretive grid, which isn't wrong. I mean, there's something demented and shameful about US overinvestment and libidinal go power by technological capitalism. At the same time, that doesn't purge the European, old Europe, which is trying to bring in line the kids, the parasital kids. You know, the new continent it looks like a child, looks like it's about to kill the father, is a menace, is a danger to old Europe, which is set up almost Oedipally. Of course, Heidegger would throw up if he heard me bring in the Oedipal edges here. But the European projection of American and US American impoverishment forecloses a serious analysis, a Daseinsanalyse, but also a serious political, socio and psychoanalytic analysis of the over-spiritualization and reliance on technology that Europe indulged and indulges also as a colonial legitimator. So one wants to read the crossfire of projections here as well, and not hesitate, even though it's been downgraded so much, to check up the psychoanalytic hate theorems and aggression. You know, before Freud posited elaborated the death drive, he had installed the Aggressionstrieb, so the drive of aggression. Then he modified it to death drive. But there's something primal about these aggressions, even especially of projections onto the other, whose plenitude also gets converted into an impoverishment. Now, as for plants, Derrida, I think, and in another life, I tried to read plants and the way they probe. They put out probes, they respond to stimulation or attack, and they pull up all sorts of energies that we have barely begun to bring into the foreground of our thought. So I'm very happy to hear that you're botanically, especially having mentioned some of the early investigators like the Humboldts, they were very, very excited about plant life in Latin America and South America and what's going on that can't be transplanted or necessarily rezoned. So what's going on with all sorts of also symbolic appropriations of different kinds of plants that we imbibe, that we reject, that are poisonous, that are pharmacons, and so on and so forth. So I don't want to overstep my privilege of being with you. We have a couple of more minutes. I'd like to surrender them to you.
Yes, Juan or Tatiana that just joined us, or I don't know if Maria Angelica wants to pursue that line a little bit more. In the meantime, I have some seeds here from a palm, a very nice, big, tall palm tree that is just outside here. And every morning I collect and I'm handing them to different places. You know, you need to circulate the seeds. And this is a very wonderful, beautiful, beautiful tree that is quite tall. I love you to see them. There are a few
well,
here.
Send me some pictures later of this beautiful tree. In the story Frankenstein's Monster, a crucial trauma occurs when a tree gets slammed by a bolt, and the loss of. But you know what? Permission to speak freely. Deleuze says, "Fuck trees." That's important too, because we're so, and I quote, or misquote, because we're too tethered to trees, family trees, this phallic thing. So he gets very annoyed with our arboreous habits and addictions. Just to bring that to our beautiful feast and table of concerns and consternation.
Juan and maybe Tatiana, you and Maria Angelica, you are joining, you are continuing now at, in 1 minute actually. But I'm sure that after listening to all these threads that Avital shared, I'm quite sure that we're going to be commenting on them, or as follow-up. So I was wondering how to bridge both, because Juan is here to continue, Avital, and I'm sure that you're completely welcome to switch on the translation, and maybe we can pursue a little bit. I don't know. I'm wondering because of your time also, Avi. I wonder if go ahead, Juan, please.
But two questions. I am here also with Luis Fernando that we also talk about this thing in another computer. Thank you, Avital. Very, very inspiring talk. Nice to meet you. Thank you, Maria Angelica, for the question about the spirit also and technology, and the moral that connect with the moral superiority. There are many things to talk about it. I don't know exactly where to start, but thinking about this, for example, German Nazi station, and technology and the communication, that was my first approach to technology in German society, the importance of communication, not only in the media, but also like in infrastructure. The first thing that Nazis did was make big roads, that connect all the people. That is also an idea that connect to Roman Empire. That was also Inca Empire. It's an imperialist way to dominate technologically by communication a territory. It's very well known, for example, in Inca Empire, how they had roads that go for all South America, and connect all a huge territory. It's not like talking about Romans, Incas, etc. That made me think also about this relation, about America and Europe, that maybe we have really to reconfigure, because exactly for the moral superiority of Europe, then there is a way to think the history and the ideas, that is always positioned in this technological superiority, no, that is also an energetic capitalistic superiority, that they had resources that they collect, and with this they reproduce technological device and by human bodies, like have an army, etc. But also, for example, when I will jump from Medios, when Alejo talk about plants and etc. I was thinking, for example, in papa, potatoes, that is also related to South America. It's like 8,000 years ago are the first signs of this. There are like, I don't know, 500 varieties now. And then in one moment after the encounter between Europe and America, Papa goes there. There is one moment in France in the 18th century, this guy called Parmentier.
Yes, I was all summer at the metro stop, Parmentier. And there's the potatoes that come from your garden.
Yes, and the Achi Parmentier that is very important in France, etc. And even if you talk with French, they believe the potato is French. Due to this, and then this is not so bad, but it's just to see how there are many a spectrum of presence that contaminate in different levels, not to talk about virus, bacteria, but also something like food, like plants that we eat and share, well, like tobacco, talking about stimulant plants. And Alejo mentioned ayahuasca, and all. I don't know. There is this kind of connection there about this technological alimentary production, also, and energetic fuel, and reservoir for a nation, in order to be powerful, and this also gives a kind of superiority. That is for me what is very strange, how this material, real stuff, like I have more energy, more arms, more technology, more infrastructure, also make me feel, also produce a spirit, a spirit that is strong, in relation to other spirits, raised. And I have many questions, but it's too short time, and I just trying to configure a way to connect with our talk that we have to start now.
Thank you, Juan. That's brilliant and beautiful. The only moral superiority comparable to that of the Europeans that I might flag that I've encountered in Latin America was, am I wrong, in Buenos Aires? But there's something also about the contamination trade-off, the plants. For example, when France was having trouble with its vineyards, it went to California and re-originated French wine from France, from California to France. And there's all sorts of export-import hubs that have symbolic indicators that you're pointing to as well. And I'm a little blown away and left stammering because Alejo, that was where Pierre Alféry was staying with Jeanne Balibar, is Parmentier. So I spent the whole summer there. And for Juan to bring it up, it's like I just took a hallucinogen, connecting some of my unconscious and conscious mappings. So I can't thank you enough for the shock you just delivered.
That means that Pierre is around here. Pierre is with us now.
Thank you. That's a real gift. You're wonderful. So, there's ever since Plato a kind of revulsion toward the technic, the technological, the techne. And this is something that we want to see because it also works against so many indigenous cultures when it's falsely assume, but in some ways not entirely falsifiable, that like who has the technology, you know, and what are the limits of the technological? Because one doesn't need necessarily a screen to start hallucinating thanks to plants. Those are different kinds of movie theaters and phantasm engines and so on. But the war of technologies and those who are without technology is something that is becoming very clear nowadays. My concern is that I must teach. And so I'm very sad to initiate a closure to this wonderful and necessary uplifting encounter with you. I would be happy to find another time to have a discussion and to look at your work and to thank you on so many levels for your extreme hospitality, to apologize for not daring to speak Spanish, but to impose this language, which of course you master so well. And I'm very touched. And that you brought up Parmentier is blowing my mind. I'm going to have to, you know. Thank you, everyone, all my friends.
Muchas gracias a ti, y ya seguiremos. We will continue. So,
okay.
Goodbye. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be well, be strong, get rid of that migraine.
Carol.
Bye, my friends.
Bye-bye.
For now.
For now.